Hello and welcome to another episode of this amazing tutorial brought to you by OneLearn. The tutorial is basically about Adobe Photoshop application, which we've talked about in the previous episodes. Now, in the last episode, we talked about opening a project on Photoshop and saving a project on the application Photoshop. Now, in this video, we are going to be starting on the tools of Adobe Photoshop application. We are going to start with a move tool, which we are going to be discussing in this video on our Adobe Photoshop tutorial. Let's get started. All right, it's a good time to move into our tools portion of Adobe Photoshop. Now, like we said when we were talking about the interface of our Adobe Photoshop application, the tools that are being used in the application are located on the left hand side of the application itself. So when you're talking about tools in Adobe Photoshop, all you have to do is look towards the left hand side of your applications. All these icons you have here are what we call the tools. Now, each of these tools also have options that make it easier to use them. Now, these options are located at the top over here, right underneath the menu buttons and above the tab portion of the interface. Now remember, if you select any of these tools over here, you can see that these options are changing depending on the tool that you have selected, which means that if you select this tool, for example, you can see that the option here are different if I select the move tool, which is this. Now let's quickly get started. We are going to talk about the move tool first. The move tool is the first tool that is situated in the tool panel of our Adobe Photoshop application. It is one of the most used tool in the Photoshop application itself because it is very useful when moving layers from one place to another. In order to edit or talk more about this, I am going to move into this next tab. This is the image I used in one of our videos to explain more of the Photoshop application. Now I am going to show you how the move tool works. First things first, we are going to come down to our layers portion and select a particular layer. Currently I have selected an image. Now we are going to move that image using the move tool by clicking and dragging. You can see that I am moving the particular layer around my workspace using the move tool. So if I want to move a layer or object from one place to another, you use the move tool. That is basically what the move tool is very useful for. Now remember that once you've clicked on the object you want to move and you move it, the icon of our mouse changes to tell us that we are moving an object at that particular time. Now we can move, like I said, we can move any object from one place to another using the move tool. Now the shortcut to selecting the move tool on your keyboard is the V button. Now all you have to do is press the V button on your keyboard and you can easily change your tools to the move tool. Now let's say for example I'm in the selection tool and I'm going to press the V on my keyboard, and there we go, we have successfully selected the move tool in our Photoshop application. Now something else you need to know is that when you are using a move tool, there are a lot of options that are available. For instance, if you move your move tool to any particular location, let's say for instance my move tool is here, and I right click on that location, the move tool will show me every layer that is available on that particular position that I have clicked on. Let's say, for example, I have a lot of layers here, obviously. Now I will discuss more about layers in the upcoming videos. Okay, let's move on. Let's say, for instance, I am looking for this layer, this particular image. I'm trying to find out where it is on my layer workspace, and I right click. It will show me different layers that are available in that particular point that I clicked on. So I can easily click on any of these layers and I can start looking for or start finding out if this particular image is in this group. If it's not, I'll move on to the next. And there we go. I think this is it. I can now move it from one place to another. So that is how you can select layers by using the move tool. Now let's move on to the options that are available here. The first option here is the auto select option. What this means is that if you click on any point on your workspace, Adobe will automatically select the layer or group on which you have clicked on at that point on your workspace. Now let's take it, for example. I want to click on my move tool. I want to use my move tool to click on a point. I'm going to click on this point. Or let's say for instance, I want to click on this point. Let's not use that point anymore. I think we've used that enough. And there we go. Now with this point that I've clicked on, you will notice on my layer that I have selected a different layer, which means that I have successfully selected what is on this point. So the particular raster file on this point has been selected. If I click on this, you can notice the change and the movement in my layer panel. I'm basically switching from one raster file to another using my move tool. Now I can choose group or layer. What this does is if I click on a point on my workspace, I can select a group. So if, like, for example, we're in a group now, the point I'm clicking on, there is a group available on that point. There's a group of there's a layer or a group layer available on that point. It will select a group, that group layer. For example, it has selected the arrow copy 5, which is the group in which this layer is available. But if I go ahead and change this to layer, it will select the layer directly. So we'll talk more about group and layers when we are talking about the layers panel, but that will be much later in our tutorial. Let's move on. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is this show transform controls. Now when you selected a layer and you want to scale or add other transformation like rotate, you can come over here, click on the show transform controls. It will show you different points on that layer that you have selected. You can easily scale up and down on that layer. You can scale up and down on that layer. You can rotate that layer by clicking on the edge, not exactly on the edge, but just a little bit away from the edge, and moving your mouse. You can rotate on that particular layer. So the move tool actually helps us transform our layer however we want. So you can see that the move tool is actually a very useful tool in Adobe Photoshop. You cannot work on your Adobe Photoshop without the move tool. It is one of the most important tools in the Photoshop application. In this video, we started talking about one of the most important tools in Adobe Photoshop, which is the move tool. Now that we started talking about tools, it is only proper that we start with one of the most important tools. And the move tool is actually very important and is used very often when working with Adobe Photoshop. Now in the next video, we are going to be talking about the selection tool on our tool workspace or tool panel.